Stacey has taken over from, Professor John Agard, who has served as the director since the beginning of the project. So I'd like to turn you over for opening remarks to Dr. Graham King.
Thanks, Azad. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for attending. Welcome especially to those potential grantees who will be attending to get more information about the program, about the application process, and also welcome and thank you very much to our various presenters who will be helping us to kind of guide the applicants through the process. So I think Azad is going to come back on in a minute, and he's going to go into a bit more detail about the program and about the purpose of the workshop and so on. So my introductory comments are going to be at a sort of high level, just a general overview of where we're at, you know, and the relevance and rationale behind this program, behind this project that is being run. I think we've had a very significant week from the point of view of climate change, especially with the publication in Science magazine of an article which indicates, you know, kind of current research and the latest research findings that indicate that we are on the brink of triggering at least 5 tipping points that will irreparably change our global climate patterns. So I think what the article is indicating is that the potential for rapid change in our climate conditions is actually much closer than previously anticipated. And we could say, I think we're seeing the first fruits of climate change effects, but if these tipping points occur, if these significant phenomenon are triggered, then we enter into a territory of non-linear changes, and that's very hard to model. And I think that the experts are indicating that if those trigger points are activated, then the models that we have might break down and the true effects might be even worse than is currently being predicted or assessed. So there's great urgency around not just sort of carbon reduction, which of course is a very, and greenhouse gas reduction, but it's a very important element of it. But of course, now we have to really shift our focus towards mitigation and resilience efforts so that we can ensure that life can continue. It won't be the same, but at least life can continue, and we can continue to somewhat prosper in the new normal that's coming down the road. And that's the focus of this program. And I think we're residents of a region that in order to survive and prosper, we need to find new and novel approaches to protect our homes, to protect our businesses, to protect our critical public infrastructure, to protect our lands from permanent damage due to climate effects. And that is really an absolute imperative now. The capacity to develop our economies, I think, also depends on our innovation efforts. And we have to be able to maintain flexibility and adaptation as we go forward. I think the likelihood is that part of the shifting climate that we experience will also mean that that would change some of our economic patterns and historically reliable sort of economic pillars of our various economies are going to be seriously challenged. So from both the point of view of adapting to the new reality and also establishing a sustainable economy going to the future, from both points of view, innovation is extremely important, and finding innovative solutions is absolutely critical. And of course, our Caribbean region, all the Caribbean countries have a very high proportion of population in coastal zones. Even continental countries in the Caribbean like Guyana, Suriname, a large proportion of the population would still be within the coastal zone. I think Belize likewise. And of course, most of the rest of the countries are islands. So almost by definition, the coastal zones are the concentration of population, and coastal zones are potentially the most affected by these changes, not only from sea level rise, but from all sorts of other associated effects. So this program does focus on the coastal zones and the populations of the coastal zones and building resilience in those coastal populations through innovation. And the intention of the program and the reason we have this workshop, for instance, is that we see the program as very developmental. We're aiming not just to come up with solutions, but to build the capacity to continue to come up with solutions beyond this program and into the future. And that's why, you know, we're having a workshop like this. We're not just asking for you, you know, as potential grantees or as proposers on the project to put in your submission and we'll go away and assess it. We're trying to make this a bit more of a collaborative process to ensure that the proposals which you bring are of the absolute highest quality, that they will meet not only the criteria for success, but also, you know, the criteria that the funding, the donor, which is the ACP program of the European Union, lay down. And because it's the European Union, they have very strict requirements around the programs, and we want to ensure that we get as many projects coming through, as many proposals coming through as possible that meet those requirements and that are going to be successful. So it's an imperative for us that funded projects are effectively managed and that the expected outcomes are achieved. So we're trying to, like I said, provide as much support as possible to make sure that the objectives that you're outlining in your proposals are realistic, to make sure that the budgets are realistic, to make sure that the basic requirements that are stipulated in this particular program, that you can meet those requirements, and that the points of impact, because any project like this, the intention is to have an impact through the use of the funds that are available. And we want to make sure that your expected impacts can realistically be obtained through the various projects and programs that you run. So that's my little introduction. I think it's a very important work, and we hope that we can, through this project and through the distribution of these grants, really contribute to developing this capacity to change, to come up with new ideas, to come up with new ways of, or implement new approaches to dealing with the problems which are not futuristic anymore. They're very real time and constantly evolving. So thank you very much. Let me hand back to Azad.
Thank you very much, Graham. It is certainly useful to have as the project director, the UE project director, somebody who is both involved in innovation and was involved in the project as well. So you have hands-on understanding of what we're trying to do here. Perry, I'm going to ask you very briefly to put the agenda quickly back up on the screen so people can see how we're going to conduct today's meeting. And while Perry is doing that, I will ask everyone to, in the chat site, to post your name and institutional affiliation. Okay, so I am going to give a brief overview of the Hit Reset project and the purpose of this workshop. And then that will be followed by, Perry, can you put it back up again, please? Yes, that will be followed by a little more detail going through of the requirements of the proposal submission and the issues of eligibility, after which we will have some presentation of critical financial reporting requirements from the UWI bursary. And subsequent to that, we'll have some guidance on the monitoring and evaluation framework within the project and how that feeds into the preparation of the proposals and the monitoring of the project during its life. We will then have some inputs from the technical advisory unit at the European Union, Mr. Gerard de Dunen. But as I said before, we want to have a little bit of flexibility in the project. So I will pause to allow any critical questions to be raised after any key presentations. And anyone who, among the presenters who feel it's important, please put your hand up and we will see whether we'll entertain any interventions or clarifications. Okay, so I'm going to ask Perry to put up my presentation at this time. Well, as Graham had already given some of the inputs into the project, um, what I would like you to understand is I will repeat a few of them which are important. And first of all, the objectives of this particular workshop is to clarify the purpose and objectives of the overall project. Then to explain some of the requirements that projects must show to demonstrate eligibility. This has been a critical element in overcoming and project proposals. Then we want to talk a bit about, like I said, the financial reporting issues. And then we want to provide some issues around sustainability of the projects in the monitoring evaluation framework. And then we want to answer any questions that you have relating to the submission and finalization of your proposals and any detailed discussions that we'll have on the day 2. We will clarify these in day 2 in more detail on a project by project basis. Day 2 has been shifted, as you know, from tomorrow to Wednesday, and each person has been allocated a slot. Next slide, please. All right. So I don't want to rehash some of the stuff which has already been raised by Graham. The project really intends to improve sustainability and climate resilience in the coastal zones of the Caribbean by supporting innovation in the planning and management of these coastal zones. And the critical areas that we're keen about supporting is really innovation around the use of digital technologies and modeling. So when we talk about, we know that 70% of the population live in the coastal zones, and therefore we're really talking about, and the coastal zones in many of the countries are much of the islands and substantial parts of the continental countries. So we are trying to foster innovation in addressing these issues, and a whole broad range of issues that affect the coastal zones can be addressed in the project. So we talk about non-resilient buildings, informal and haphazard development, but we don't want to limit it only to the urban planning and management components, which are hampered by uncoordinated approaches, but also the critical issues of stakeholder engagement, multi-sectoral planning, the integration of the various sectors into the overall planning and management of the coastal zone, which generally has not been well done. So as Dr. Graham mentioned, this project is funded by the European Union under the ACP, the African, Caribbean, and Pacific States Innovation Fund. And this particular innovation fund is intended to support innovation ecosystems in a range of different areas. And this particular project focuses on one particular component on it, which has to deal with, like I said, digital and modeling technologies utilized in planning and management in the coastal zone. We know that many agencies work in these areas, and they are fraught with a range of areas, not just around the technological aspects, but very often the technological implementation of new and innovative technologies are hampered by institutional limitations, staff requirements, legislative interagency coordination, and a range of other issues which we expect will be addressed in the projects along with the specificities of the technological innovation. Next slide, please. So what do we expect? So we're looking at prediction of climate and natural hazard impacts in the area, but those could be around a broad range of things. And we're looking at digital and modeling tools that are relevant in the context where they're being applied and hopefully can be replicated. So we're looking, first of all, that the tools that are developed are suited to the context in which they are being developed, and they can be embedded. That is, they can be utilized in a sustainable manner, and we expect the proposals to demonstrate that. And then we're also looking at tools that have broader applicability. Now, this is not a absolute requirement, but it would really support the development of the tool if it is more broader and can be applied in other countries in the CARIFORUM region. Again, like I said, the technologies themselves may be interesting and useful, but we're also interested in how the environment, the ecology, the innovation ecology in which the tools will be developed and utilized, that the people are aware of the types of obstacles and the things that need to be done to overcome them. Next slide, please. So this is the third call. We had a pilot call, and we had the open call, and this is the third call, of which the deadline for the submissions are the 30th of September of this month. So we know that most of you all have already submitted both eligibility documents and draft proposals and so on. And we're hoping that this workshops help you to finalize your proposals for submission. The minimum grant is, in this particular call, is the minimum grant will be 200,000 euros and a maximum of 300,000 euros. Now that is the grant. It doesn't mean that that is the value of the project. Projects can be more than this based upon contributions by the applicant, voluntary contributions, administrative contributions, whatever by the applicants. So the 200,000 to 300,000 is the minimum and maximum of the grant fund under the project. So lead applicants and actions have to be from an agency that operates in the CARIFORUM countries and being developed for a CARIFORUM country. And the CARIFORUM countries are basically the CARICOM member countries and the DR. There's an exception that Montserrat, which is a territory, is not included. The duration of the actions will not normally exceed 24 months. In this particular case, in the third call, because it is a bit later on, we're really looking at projects that will finish before the end of 2024. So we're talking about projects that are a little shorter, perhaps about 1.5 years, as 18 months is a bit shorter than the longer grants, but we're a little flexible on that. What we want is enough time to start to assess the outcomes of the project before the end of the project and can be wrapped up within the life of the project. As I said before, the actual grant is 200,000 to 300,000 euros, but the projects can be more, but there are no formal co-financing requirements as in previous grants. The applicants can contribute voluntarily in a range of different ways, and that can be worked out at the level of the budget proposed. Next week. Now, Perry will go a little more in detail on this as we go through the guidelines, which most of you all have already received and are working on it. So I said the key thing is that it includes the development of digital and modeling technologies, which can improve the prediction and impacts of climate change and natural disasters, or other factors which can lead to the improvement and planning and management of coastal communities in the region. And like I said, this is not planning and management in the narrow sense of land use planning only. even though this tends to be a broad umbrella that pulls on many different sectors, it really would have to do with elements which improve the planning and management of coastal communities generally, and can come from a range of different sectors: the agricultural sector, tourism, focus on disaster management, a range of different types of factors. It must demonstrate innovation. It must show relevance to particular articulated problems. It must have a robust technology. It must be able to first be embedded, that the technology can be transferred or applied in a particular context, or it could be scaled up in a national and regional case. And it must be able to demonstrate that it will live beyond the life of the project. The idea is not just to fund a particular piece of research or innovation that dies with the project. So the evaluation criteria, which is from the open call, which has remained largely the same, is, and you will see that in the guidelines, is competence of the proposer, 15%, the relevance of the project to the context, the national, the regional context, 20 points. The methodology for implementing the project, 20 points. And as you see, the innovation potential is the highest particular category. And then knowledge transfer and sustainability. As you know, you can be in touch with the program manager for further details, but I will pause now briefly to see if there are any particular questions that have been raised that you feel are urgent before we go on to Dr. Pola's presentation. All right, I've seen nothing in the chat. So what I will do now is I will hand over to Dr. Perry Pola, who many of you all have already been in touch with, who is the project manager for the project. Perry, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction, Azaz. My presentation is really looking at the key elements for eligibility and proposal submission. I'm trying to figure out why it's not going right. Okay, so my presentation outline, I'll first look at the eligibility criteria. I'll briefly say something about the budgets, formatting budget, something about the logical framework, the value of stakeholder reporting, the declaration of honor, the evaluation process, and timelines. Now, the major challenge we faced in the pilot call and the open call is eligibility. Most applicants have produced reasonably quality applications, but some applicants have not been able to submit the appropriate documentation to demonstrate eligibility. So you would see in your guidelines that the applicants must be a legal person or registered entity. And when we talk about legal person, we're looking at businesses. So it could be private sector firms, it could be universities, it could be NGOs, it could be research and innovation facilities, etc. But they have to be registered in the Caribbean, and we're saying it has to be before 2017, as I said, in CARIFORUM countries. Now, you also have to submit information that demonstrates that you implemented 2 research and innovation projects for an amount of 75,000 each between 2018 and 2022. Now, that is a concept, a term that we have a little flexibility on. So if perchance your project has started before 2018 and is completed by 2022, then that is okay. Even if your project has started and is in 2023, but it is a multi-year project that has started before 2020 and finishing in 2023. That we will also consider that. We can't guarantee it, but it's also something we're considering. We would prefer completed projects, but in a situation where it does go over, if it's a multi-year project, we will give it consideration. And we also would like to know a letter stating from your organization that that your organization has been responsible for the preparation and management of the activities that are being funded. So the lead applicant, as I mentioned, it's a range of entities, and they do not have to demonstrate that they are the subject matter expert. All the lead applicant has to do is demonstrate that they meet the eligibility criteria. Now, you can have co-applicants on the proposal who can demonstrate the technical ability. So that gives you the opportunity to form coalitions and consortiums. And once you specify this in your project write-up, that, you know, it will help you demonstrate that overall the consortium has the capacity to implement this project technically and from a grant management perspective. And as we said, the co-applicants are not lead applicants. So these co-applicants do not need to submit any eligibility documents. We just need to know a little bit about them in the proposal. Now, we made mention of there are third parties. Now, if you are contracting outside, you can have it's ideal if you're doing contracts with third parties that you do it within the CARIFORUM region, you know, companies. But if it is that you are doing a contract with someone outside of the CARIFORUM region, you do need to specify who is this entity and what special service does this entity deliver that cannot be done in a CARIFORUM country. You do have to take into consideration that some countries are not eligible by the EU. Cuba, I think, is one of them. But generally, you have to take that into consideration when you are doing it. And it must be in the form of a contract, so it must have a terms of reference and a budget. It can't be that they are just a partner. It has to be a very specified contract if you're doing it with third parties. Now, to
Barry,
go into the various documents that are required.
Barry, can I just pause for a second here?
Yeah, sure.
Just one clarification on the eligibility of projects. We do have the representative from the TAU, and he could come in at any time or later on to provide further clarity on this matter. The eligible projects don't only have to be grant projects. They can be projects that are borrowed funds. Institution may be borrowing funds to do specific activities. Once those activities are R&I related activities, it could be borrowed funds. It could be co-institutional funding. Once you can demonstrate that this particular minimum 75,000 has been put aside for a quote-unquote project around R&I out of institutional funding, and therefore we can evaluate the capacity of the organization. So people initially think when we said 2 projects of 75,000 that they mean that there's a narrow focus around only grant funding. Of course, the grant funding is the easiest one to evaluate, is very clear, its objectives and so on. But there are other elements that can be used for eligibility of projects. Sorry to intervene there, Barry.
No problem. Okay, so in terms of the documents required, we would want a certificate of incorporation or some other appropriate official document to show your legal status. So we have to read this document and know that you've been established in before 2017 and the country you're established in. Some private companies use the certificate of incorporation. We've allowed legislation for ministries, you know, so we could always discuss what is the appropriate document if you're not a traditional company. The notice of board of directors, we just want to know basically what is your management structure? Who is in charge of the company? You know, is there a board above it? Is it just the CEO? Is it just a couple directors? We just want to have an idea. So an org chart is a suitable document that you can send in, or even just the list of names of directors. The certified copies of audited financial statements for the past 2 years in the name of the organization. Now, we will appreciate that. Sometimes there is a challenge where you may not have all the audited statements up to the last 2 years. We'll ask you for the ones that have been you last did, and if it's not as close to last year or the year before, the UE bursary could still make a decision on this matter. So, but it is something that you do need to submit. A letter authorizing the execution of the project from the board of directors or head of the organization. Or that is basically stating that you are responsible for the writing of this project and you are responsible for the management of it. So in other words, you can't just take it and subcontract it to somebody else to manage it. We're going to be dealing with you. Whoever sends that letter, you are the lead applicant. Our project will be dealing directly with you. That's what that letter is for. The declaration of honor, we would have sent everyone a template for the declaration of honor. The idea behind it is that the EU has certain criteria that they do not allow. They don't want to do business with certain organizations, and it's things like, you know, trafficking or being bankrupt or very extreme things. And I don't think many organizations in the Caribbean would have a problem with this. So we just sent you a document, the Declaration of Honor. So you just have to put your institution's name and sign it once you're not in breach of anything. The certification letters. Now, these are donor letters, basically. So if your project is completed, we are asking you to ask your donor to send a letter stating the name of the project, the period which it was executed, the budget, the amount of money they gave you, and the fact that it was completed satisfactorily. And the name of your organization as well, so that we can look at this letter and say, right, we know the donor was happy, and we could verify that the project was executed, that the donor did said funds, and we could verify the information. Then we would also need document to verify that your organization has managed the 2 projects. So we're really talking about contracts here. If you signed project contracts are the best things to send, right? Now, after sending the contract, we need you to write a couple paragraphs on the nature of your R&I project. We can't determine, if we look at a contract, whether or not your project really had R&I. We'll be guessing. So we're asking you to write that. And when what I'm really asking you all to do is explain if there's anything that is new in your project. Whatever you were doing, was it the first time it's done in the country? Was it the first time it's done in the Caribbean? Did you come up with the methodology? Did you adapt the methodology? You know, those are the things that we're looking for us to really understand whether there's innovation in this proposal. You know, did you create something new? You know, so I am there to assist you. If you send me this sort of information, I will work with you and provide feedback to help you improve that write-up. Generally, I would like the write-up to, just have the title, the period of activity, the project value, the contract amount, and website, and then your explanation below. It's just a format that it makes it easier for me to, for anyone to read, to have that information formatted like that. But once again, once you start the process, we will get to this stage. Now, when you are calculating the value of your project, many times people will be getting their funds in US dollars or local currency. We need to convert it to euro. Now, we can't use the euro rate that is presently existing. What I'm asking you to do is to use this. If you type in info euro into the internet, you'll get the currency exchange platform that the EU uses for grant contracts. And what I'm asking you to do now is set the date, the month and the year to the time when your project started, right? And that should give you a rough estimation of the euro amount. If you're close and you want to say, okay, right, we got money in December of 2020, and we got an next tranche in 2021, and you think it's necessary to look at the two tranches and when you got it, fine. But really the easiest thing to do is just use it at its start date, because the fluctuations during the period may not, generally won't be that much. Okay, to demonstrate, yes. So we are looking for projects that demonstrate R&I. Now, a purely infrastructural one, like if you're building a building, may not fall under the category. If you're just purchasing things, may not fall under it. If it's purely capacity building, workshops and training, may not fall into it. We know that the nature of projects in the Caribbean are often many times capacity building. So what we're asking to do is say, okay, we understand projects are complex. If there is some capacity building, some procurement, some infrastructure, that's okay, some. But the essence of it should really highlight the research and innovation. And a lot of that comes from your write-up. So sometimes I might look at a project and say, okay, there's research and innovation here. And you know what? Although there's capacity building, the capacity building is coming out as a result of the innovation. Then, we can justify it. But like I said, we can look at it, but please try to focus on projects that are mainly R&I. Now, in terms of the budget, I already told you how to calculate your budget. Generally, because we want the budget done in euros. So we have in the budget template, you would have in columns A to E, you would fill the information as if it's a 2-year project. And in columns F to I, you fill what is year one. How much money do you expect in year one based on your activities? And as a result, we will be looking to try and give you that year one tranche. Maybe in two transfers, but we'll try to get you that year one tranche. And then in a second year project, we'll try to get you the rest. All that is dependent on how well you provide feedback to us and the bursary. Now, normally you would see here like the thematic area, for example, human resources. So if you're hiring a project manager, you would put the project manager, you'll put the numerical code for the project manager. We know we're paying the project manager in terms of months. The units would be the number of months. The value of the project manager is how much you're paying them, and the total cost will be this. So in year one, it will be now 12 the same 2,000, and it'll be 2,400. Okay, and when you are on the second page of your template, you need to justify it. Okay, what is the project manager doing? And you explain it here. And preferably in terms of the justification, I would like to know, okay, how did you calculate it? Same information here, but I'd like to know, okay, how did you get this cost? Is this cost something that you are benchmarking it against something? For example, if UE's cost per project manager at a certain level might be 2,000 euro. So if you say that, then I know, okay, that's a realistic figure. If your company hires people at this rate, then say, okay, this is the rate that they normally hire them. But explain why, how you got the figure. In terms of logical framework, it's a slightly different logical framework that we are looking at. So the main difference, I mean, for those of you who work with logical frameworks, the main difference is that we're asking for a baseline, a target, and the current value. So, you know, you need to figure out whatever you're assessing, is there a baseline, you know, and where would it be at the end of the project? How would that baseline change? And in year one, you would give me the current value. So you'll have an idea of where that is. So for submission, you could leave this column blank, but I would expect in year one, you know, at the end of year one, we'll be able to put a figure inside there. So the logical framework, I don't have to explain a logical framework to you all, but if you need any explanation, send me an email and I could deal with this in more detail. Okay, also in your logical framework, this is something that's very useful to do at the base. Organize the activities in terms of work plans. So group the activities that are similar. So for example, in our work plan 1, we have organization of calls for proposals. So the things we'd have to do is we'd develop the guidelines, we would produce a report, we'd have the PDME, we would award people grants, we'd have the innovation running, and then we went into the open stage. So we grouped everything. So it's always useful if you can group them into work packages so that we could, you know, we could discuss where you are in terms of your work packages. And also in the log frame, just very quickly, just stick in the summary of the budget in there. And you need to state the assumptions when you across here. How did you get everything? Well, these are the assumptions. Okay, the stakeholder report and declaration of honor. Okay, stakeholder report. I already explained declaration of honor. The stakeholder report, what we're asking you all to do before you submit the proposal to us, just identify about three persons who may be of the target group and the benefit or the final beneficiaries, and ask them to look at it, because we don't want to develop a project and fund it and it has no relevance to the target groups of final beneficiaries. When we write projects, oftentimes in our mind we say, yes, this is good for target group X and Y and Z, but we never bother to ask them. So if you can, we'd really appreciate it if you send it to 3 persons and get some feedback from them and write out what the feedback is. You don't have to incorporate the feedback, but it could be very useful for you to say, okay, we address the feedback in this way. Now, if you've done prior stakeholder consultations on the topic that you're doing, you still have to do this, but you could also mention that in your project proposal, because it shows you know what you're talking about, and that will go very, very well in your application. Okay, so the timelines we're looking at right now, we are at the project, we're having the workshop. The final proposal submission is the 30th. And unfortunately, we, for the open call and the pilot call, there was a little more leeway we could have given you, but because we are so short of time and the project, we'll have to then go through the approval and then the contracting stage. We really can't do much for you after the 30th. So please send in your eligibility documents and your proposals as completely as possible. And if you want to send in your eligibility documents earlier, I will look at it and I will work with it. You don't want to do all the work on developing a proposal and then get shot down because your eligibility documents are not in order. I mean, still a day or two after, I will still be willing to work on your eligibility and ask you questions and give you feedback and such, but we can't do it for too long because we really have to get to contracting. Hopefully in a month's time, we'll be able to tell you whether you're successful or not successful. And we would really like to look back at your budgets, look back at co-financing. Now, one of the things to remember, when you're doing your grant budget, do your budget as if that is the amount you are asking for, right? On a separate, you could take the same budget template, right, that you're doing. So separately, you could list out the co-financing. What is the co-financing that you are willing to submit, right? And then after, we'll ask you to merge all that. If that is too difficult to do by the 30th, then we could work on that subsequently during the contracting phase. But use the budget template to work out how much you're asking for, and if you can, just list out the co-financing that you may be able to provide if you can. Okay, and as I said, we're hoping to start the project by the 1st of January 2023. Okay, that's my presentation. Do we have any questions?
We'll take a few critical questions here. We do have a question and answer period, but if there's anything that arises, please put your hand up. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions.
Okay, I think next person in is Carol Mohammed. You want to introduce her, Azad?
Yeah, well, Carol Mohammed is from the bursary, and she has worked with us on quite a few EU-funded projects, and she has a very clear idea of the requirements, because as the lead applicant, the UWI will have to fulfill these particular financial and reporting requirements to the EU, and therefore we will require that our grantees and our co-applicants also fulfill that to us. So we are sort of keeper of the financial procedures. So I'll hand over to Carol Mohammed from the bursary right now, the projects office in the bursary.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the Hit Reset team for including the bursary in this presentation. Good morning to all the workshop participants. Part of our job at the bursary is to complete the financial reporting for the project. And what this requires is a combination of documentation, as well as a bunch of calculations that we actually have to do to formulate the report. I've come up with 5 items that we can discuss with regards to what you would need as the grantees to submit to us. The first one, requests for funding via tranches. The second, biannual financial reporting to be done by the grantees. The third, required templates, documents for submission. Fourth, procurement guidelines. And the fifth, external service contracts. So I'll just give a little brief. It's not an exhaustive list. I'll just give a little brief of each point so you can get some idea of what we need from you. So the request for funding via tranches, the tranches will be supplied to each of the grantees upon request. So you make your request to the bursary and we would arrange for your wire transfer. Just take note that the funds will be transferred in your country currency. If we have issues with our bankers and we're unable to process your wire in your country currency, we can do alternate. For example, we can transfer US dollars. So that's something that could be discussed if we come up with any issues while we're in the process of the wire transfer. There's a template that we can forward to you for the information that we would need for the wire transfer. By information, what I mean is your bank information, your account number, your bank name, bank address, and so on and so forth. So we can send you that template and you submit to us all your banking information. When you're requesting your tranche, what we require from you is a memo, and you basically list the amount of funds that you require. We also ask that you submit a portion of your budget that more or less gives us an idea of how much you actually need. So let's say, for instance, you need an arbitrary figure, let's say 100,000 euros. You submit your budget that is allocated to the 100 euros. So we can actually tell from your budget what line items you need covered by the relevant tranche. And just to note, any unutilized funds has to be returned to the UE. So at the end of your grant, if there are any funds remaining, it has to be transferred back to the university. Next slide, yeah. The biannual reporting. Now, the reason I say biannual meaning half yearly, is that we report yearly to the EU. The reason that we ask for half yearly reports is because the financial report is a combination of all the grantees as well as all the partner reports merged into one document. It's time consuming, it takes a lot of time. So we ask that biannually you submit reports to us so that we can start formulating the report. And what that means is at the end of the year, we don't have a lump sum of documentation being sent to us, and it's taking a long time for us to submit the financial report. We have a template. The prescribed format must be followed when submitting reports. All original documents must be couriered to the project leader, and this should be filed in chronological month and date. The reason for this is we have yearly expenditure verification reports or audits that are done by external auditors, and they would need to see the original documents as well as soft copies. Again, soft copies of all the documents must be submitted with your biannual reports. So this is just an idea of the checklist that you all would be given when you're submitting documents to us. Now you can attach this financial checklist to your documentation just to ensure that all the items from 1 to 9 are there. So of course you include your grantee name and the period of the report. You tick off the items on your checklist. Of course, the memo from the grantee approving the expense report or your biannual report and all the supporting documents. So we need something from your project lead stating, okay, we've submitted our biannual report. These are our supporting documents. There's a biannual statement of income and expenditure that is expected together with all your supporting documents. So this is more or less the summary of all the supporting documents that you would have attached. Soft copies of all documents must be stored in chronological order by month and date, and this is for easy retrieval by the auditors. We generally ask for your ledger extracts. If you don't have any sort of financial accounting system, if you have a manual system, I know, for instance, some people use Excel spreadsheets. If you have those where you record the income and expenditure related to your grant, you can submit that to us as well. So that's just an internal check to ensure that the documentation that you have submitted to us are in line with what you've reported on your system with regards to the grantee amount, your income received and the amount of expenses. Of course, we ask for supporting documents. These would be certified copies of all your invoices and receipts, certified copies of memos requesting payments. And by this, we mean when you submit an invoice for payment, we know that in most cases, you would have some supporting document that goes to your accounting unit together with your invoice. It might be a payment voucher. You might have some other internal document that you use. These are normally signed by the relevant personnel. Maybe you have your accounting assistant, you have your accountant. So we're asking for a copy of that document together with your invoice. So we want to see your internal controls. We want to see that the documents are signed off by the relevant persons. We also need certified copies of all your third-party contracts and timesheets of hired persons, certified copies of checks, if checks are used, if you're using your third-party bank transfers, of course, copies of your bank statements that show your third-party transfers. In case of travel, of course, we need your copies of confirmed itineraries, your ticket stubs. If you're receiving subsistence and per diems, we need a document showing that you have signed for receiving your subsistence and or per diems. Certified copies of procurement documents for fixed asset purchases. This would comprise maybe your comparable quotes. If you have a single source provider, we would ask for a justification for that. And again, all documents must be stored in soft copy and forwarded to us when you're sending us your biannual report. Next slide, please, Barry. So this is what your statement of income and expenditure would look like. Very simple. All you're listing is your income in one column and your expenditure in another column. We have a couple columns that states your month, your date, your vendor name, description. Of course, all you're filling in is your local currency amount. At the bursary, we would normally calculate the euro rate to be used for the period, the 12-month period, and we would actually include that data in. So all you're really filling in is your local currency amount. Yeah, next slide, Barry. We have 1 or 2 procurement guidelines. All fixed assets will be purchased by the grantee from tranches received from the university. And just to give you an idea of what our fixed asset is, according to the revised financial code of the UE, capital expenditure shall have the same meaning as construed in commercial accounting. This is an expenditure which yields benefit over a period for more than 1 year. Such expenditure is generally intangible assets which are written off over the useful life of the asset through an annual depreciation charge. We are guided by our internal policies and procedures at the bursary, and for us, our procurement guidelines require that any fixed asset over 5,000 be submitted with the relevant documents. So if it's a sole source provider, you need to submit a justification memo stating the reason for the purchase of the item from the sole source provider. If it's not a sole source provider, you need to have 3 comparable quotes to give us an idea of, your ability to more or less go in and ask other vendors what the cost of the item would be, so we can have some comparable quotes to give us an idea of the cost of the item and whether it's justified. The payment vendor, the payment method for the vendor must be clearly stated. So in your documents, you need to tell us whether they are to be paid by check or by wire transfer. Most cases at the university, we mostly process payments via wire transfer. Next slide, Barry. Contracts for services. So the university normally have templates for contracts for services, and this can be used as a guide to you all if you all have to hire any persons or companies related to your grants. Just bear in mind that the contracts must state the period of service and the value of service. You should also have your terms of reference included in the contract. Now, if you need these templates, we can always send it to you as a guide. You can look at some of the clauses and maybe include it in your contract for services. A contract for service is issued to persons once it's over a specified period of time. So I know some of you all might have one-off payments to vendors. These are fine. You don't need contracts for this. If you've hired persons and they're carrying out the service for a period of months, then definitely we require a contract for services. If it's a company, we ask that you send the required documents to us, which would be the articles of incorporation, the list of directors. So these are documents that we would review when we're going through your contract for services. That is it so far. Does anyone have any questions? Again, this is just a brief list. There might be additional documents that we might ask for at another period if it comes up.
Thank you very much, Carol. I don't want people to be too worried about this. As you could see, our bursary and our officers are well versed in the requirements and procedures for meeting the EU requirements for reporting. We do have some of our own internal reporting requirements that Carol would have also talked about. And as she indicated, these templates that need to be followed can be made available to you. So you don't have to worry if you didn't catch everything. In fact, we can make the presentations from today's meeting available to anybody who wants them. In fact, we could perhaps distribute the presentations for today's meeting. And as she indicated, she can make on request through us. We can make templates of the various types of documents available if you feel there's need for any of that in the preparation of your budgets. We have not had a problem over the years when it comes to that to have direct communications between bursary to bursary. In other words, sometimes we don't necessarily have to act as an intermediary. The accounting person, there can be a direct communications with the accounting person and the projects office and the bursary at UWI. So be aware that these are complex matters. We have to fulfill the requirements, but we have worked out templates and we can provide guidelines as the project proceeds. Okay, so if you're worried that you've not covered all the questions, that you won't be able to tell your accounting department or your accounting officer, don't be worried by that. We have further steps and information that can be made available. But notwithstanding that, are there any immediate or pressing questions for Carol Mohammed from the projects office at UE? Okay, again, I see no hands up. So what we will do at this particular point is we'll move on to the next presenter, and that is Dr. Lenice Batiste. Lenice has again worked with our project team here at Blue Space and at Stacy and UWI on various projects. So she is au courant with the requirements generally of the EU in terms of project reporting and monitoring on our own evaluation framework. And she has been working on this project directly and is familiar and leads our internal team on these matters. So I'll now hand over the floor to Lenice, Dr. Batiste. Lenice, the floor is yours. I'm not hearing you, Lenice. Volume.
Right, good. Good morning, everyone. Perry, I'd like to share my screen, please.
Okay, it should allow you to share it on multiple, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Right. So good morning, everyone. So I am working with the project team to help with the internal monitoring of the project as well as with the external monitoring of the project. Okay. Are you able to see my screen, everyone?
Proceed, Lenice. We've seen it very well.
Yes, Lenice.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Okay, good. So as you know, the key stakeholders of this project are the EU, as explained earlier, UACPS, DEMA, and the University of Suriname. And the primary focus of the project is really to have behavior change in coastal settlements in our Caribbean region. And looking specifically at what happens with youth, with women, with urban poor, etc. However, the engagement under this project will not be directly with those stakeholders, but through projects that will impact the lives of those stakeholders, which is why which is why we want the engagement with our senior technical experts from around the region, the agencies who are involved with planning and management of coastal settlements, with community stakeholders, with our researchers, etc., to really be inclusive, that they understand the needs of the persons from whom we want the behavior change, but also that there may be frameworks and policies that need to be informed, and they will be informed by the work that they will see and observe through these projects. Okay. So overall, in terms of the overall project performance of this entire project, large project, it's really to looking at the impact that this project will have on the regional management of on regional urban planning and management for coastal settlements. And we're looking for projects that can be replicable, can be sustainable, and they have the potential for scaling up. So we want those things explained, and those are the grantees that will be best placed to be selected. So as you know, as it was explained by Assad and by Perry, the three objectives or three results that we want, I should say: digital literacy knowledge and use of emerging technologies. We want to support whatever local and indigenous knowledge, but they may be in communities and in countries. And we also want to promote, things that are energy efficient, things that provide alternative energy, or we want you to use whatever innovation is out there that is really going to build the resilience of coastal settlements. We want to focus on national agencies and inclusive planning consultative processes. We want to understand what has been done to test the innovations that you will propose. What are the things that are going to be in place for community national ownership? What are the things that you will do to really make the outcomes of your projects sustainable, right? Things that you will help to implement that will have those results. So we developed some criteria by which we're going to assess these results. And the first one is competence, and this has to do with the competence of the team undertaking the project, and as well as maybe institutions. So as Perry explained, proof of eligibility is something he went into detail about. He's always there to help you to make sure you are providing the required evidence. But what is clear that the reviewers are going to look at, we are going to look at whether the RNI projects this RNI project, or the RNI projects that you have had before, whether they really support your organizational mandate, because that will also help with the sustainability of the project. We want to know the length of time, of course, that you've been in existence. We want the relevant experiences of the individuals, not just as a broad CV, but in terms of applying this innovation that you're going to present in your project. And of course, well, as it was explained, that limit of 75,000 euros, something that you're going to have to justify and demonstrate. And of course, that your organization has the infrastructure to manage this grant if you are selected to receive the grant. Secondly, relevance, which will be 20% of the score that you're going to be awarded. We want the activities that you undertake. We want to show the link to what is needed in the communities by the that will encourage that the behavior change that we want to see and the increased resilience that we want to see. Okay, so you must be able to identify your stakeholder groups, justifying everything with justification, of course. You have to demonstrate how you engage in consultations, and on consultations do not have to be large meetings of people, but you can report on community community engagement, formal and informal, just how you went about receiving the information. Did you look at previous reports that were done on the community? You know, where did you get the information from that really says this proposal, this solution, I should say, that you're proposing is really a superior one that's going to meet the needs of the persons in your community, and the communities that will be impacted, I should say. Provide all the descriptions about the needs assessment and situational assessment that you would have done. Identify your problem, support it with research, provide references, describe your solution, again, support it with scientific evidence or research that says this worked elsewhere with similar conditions, so we believe it's going to work here. Show the alignment with the SDGs, the newer urban agenda, and any local development plans are already in existence for the communities that will be impacted by the work that you're going to undertake. And of course, you're going to have to show alignment with objective of the project, which is about having digital technologies that can be replicated. Okay. Your methodology now. We want to know what you're going to do, because remember, when you write up this project, the persons who are going to be reviewing are not there to ask a second question or a third question. So make sure your language is crisp and clear. Get some, and part of the feedback that you're going to seek is that people understand exactly what you're going to do. Step one, step two, what is going to be implemented simultaneously, what has to go one before the other. Be clear about those things. So then we go on now to specific technical things now. If you have objectives and criteria, make sure they are smart, that is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and will allow for completion within the time that you identify, right? Activities, they must be justified and aligned with the objectives and outputs. The timeline of the activities, as we said, is achievable, but you are giving us the required details so we can say, ah, yes, that is possible given the implementation context that was described in the proposal. We want to understand your costing, realistic costing. Because we have persons who will take a second look at what the costs look like and whether those are really realistic costs that you have input in your proposal. Your information sources, the ones that you would use to get the information, are you going to justify why they're there? Your data collection methods and tools, describe them fully, and also talk about what intention is of each data collection method and tool, and why it's best for the environment and the persons from whom you have to collect the data. Okay. Your data analysis, you're making sense, certainly have to make sense of your findings, help us to understand what you believe you will find, or you believe is important to understand about the context in which you intend to work. And of course, you want everything to be valid. It must be appropriate for your context. It must be aligned with the objectives of the project. It must be linked, because all these things will help us. If what you're doing is linked to accepted external standards for the industry, for the field, let us know why it is this solution is really superior and a good one for the context in which your project is going to be implemented. So notice my colors got brighter here. And this because this is really the crux of the project. We want to understand the innovation potential of your projects. It must be novel. And let's talk about novelty for a minute. In this case, it's novelty is new for the context. In other words, it may have been tried somewhere else. It's not going to be tried here. It could be novel as in you may you are drawing from many different disciplines to come up with this solution. Okay, it may be something, a use of something completely new. Again, for the context, tell us what is described. Give us the details. And it may be something that you have seen maybe from another part of the world that you believe can be implemented in the Caribbean region and in the Caribbean country. Okay. The novelty as well could be maybe one particular section of your country, and you know, doing it in another section of the country. It might be asking your one of the ministries to operate differently. You know, just tell us what is this innovation and why this is an important solution and an appropriate solution for your context. Again, now, if you in your proposal, you may have identified similar innovations and you've noted the challenges that they had. And so you say that this project is superior because you're able to address the challenges faced in other projects which had a similar innovation. Also, we really want to, on the applicability of your whatever solution that you propose, you must justify its applicability. Okay, so again, identify the barriers. Don't be afraid to talk about the barriers, but also talk about what you believe this proposal will offer to address those barriers. Okay. Then again, in brightly green, it's very critical, knowledge transfer. So whatever you do, and this will contribute then to the sustainability of the project. But as you engage in the project, what will be done to empower the stakeholder groups to really build the resilience that you require, that will improve the urban planning and land management in our region or in the context that you will identify. Okay, what are the steps that you will take to share that knowledge, to pass on that knowledge, to get feedback about what you're doing, to revise, to be able to do things differently. Let us know that. Okay, let's understand that. Then finally, the big thing of sustainability. Whatever you do, identify the pathways that can be undertaken to integrate, to embed what you're proposing into the national systems and then maybe the regional systems, depending on what you are proposing. Okay, what are the things that can carry on after funding has finished? You must be clear about those things. And if there's a co-financing aspect of it, you must be clear about what can continue without the financing of this particular project. Okay, what is it that will facilitate replicability and transferability? Be clear about that. Do your research. Okay, do not say in all Caribbean islands or in all of our country without understanding whatever legal framework is there or policy framework is there that will facilitate what is you want to do, because saying all over the Caribbean may not have policies that would readily accept something from one country to the next. So be very clear about when you, statements that you may make in that way. And again, don't be afraid to identify the barriers to sustainability. Those are you must know those things so that when you make your proposal, we understand that you know what it is you're doing. Let me just also now talk about your performance levels, because as we review the proposals, we're going to categorize for each of the criteria identified before, whether the response was emerging, developing, proficient, or exemplary. And really, it's going to be emerging if we don't have the details. If we have to ask too many times, I wonder if, or is it that they're really saying something like that? Or if the language is ambiguous, if you're really not clear about your steps, that's going to be an emergent response. Okay? A developing response where you have many of the required details, but somehow the pieces have not come together in the puzzle for us. Yes, there are good things identified, but we're not sure how the pieces are fitting together to really say this person or this organization is ready to receive these funds to proceed. Proficient responses are good. They're good. All descriptions are great, and you're going in to fix. But the difference between a proficient response and an exemplary response is that novel application piece. In that it is really a different way of doing things that have not been done before. You're not just solving something, but you really have taken the steps to identify something that is really being done differently than before, and to provide, hopefully, maybe some sort of transformational change that is, that is really addressing the problem in a way it was not addressed before, and so hopefully results will be better. Right. So here are my just general selections. As you prepare your proposals, develop your own checklist using the criteria that we have here, just to make sure you have put into the proposal everything that you believe the reviewers will need to assess your proposal fairly. Also, provide all the essential details. You will not have a chance, as I said before, to explain to the reviewers when they are going through. Clearly identify and explain your innovation, and clearly describe the pathways for knowledge transfer and sustainability. So thank you, and we look forward to receiving your submissions, and of course, any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you very much, Lenice. I hope that presentation demonstrates that the team has a clear understanding of what the expectations are for your proposals and how we will evaluate it. Let me assure you that if the proposal falls in one of those earlier categories like emergent, we will ask questions of you and give you an opportunity even after you submit to improve it. So it is not bam, you submit on the 30th and as is closed off. We will, if we have any doubts or we need further clarity, we're more than happy. We will be asking you questions if we have doubts and evaluating it to make sure it meets the minimum requirement for clarity. So you are allowed in the early evaluation period in discourse with us to improve it. And again, this information is available in the guidelines, but we can, because it is so well prepared, like Carol's, Lenice, we can make this available to applicants so it could provide them with guidelines or clarity as they go forward. So again, my question is, are there any immediate questions for Lenice from the people present? Just stick your hand up and I will allow you a couple of people to respond to her immediately. All right, I suspect that with like the last three presentations, a lot of information has been presented, and it's difficult because normally there'll be a team of people putting together proposals, finance, management, technical aspects, and so on. And we may not have the full complement here today. So you all can know that, and you all can get back to us with any questions that you may want clarity. We can refer it to the specific person in our team, but we can make these guidelines available. All right, well, if there are no specific questions, I haven't seen any hands come up. We're happy to have a representative of the OACP, the Technical Advisory Unit, Gerard Denonen. And I would like, first of all, Gerard, to, you can make any comments you think are relevant from your point of view, or issues that you think may need clarifying coming out of the presentations, not the questions. And I suspect what we may do is we may start off with your presentation as the first of the response, because it'll be useful for any questions that people have to get clarity from the Technical Advisory Unit of the OACP. All right, so Jared, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Asad. Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you in the Caribbean. There's been an interesting 1.5 hour listening to the your third call for proposals, which is indeed a very interesting one. The topic is also very, very interesting as well. From our point of view, I'm representing the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, short called OACPS. This is a group of all member countries from Africa, the Caribbean, and Pacific, 79 countries who are put together and are a voice to the European Union. That's why the headquarters is also in Brussels. And the EU, by the way, is financing our program, which we call the OACPS Research and Innovation Program. Well, part of this program, from which I am the program manager, is that we have a fund. It's called the ACP Innovation Fund. And out of this innovation fund, we have selected 12 projects, of which Hit Reset is one of those 12. The Hit Reset project is indeed a project which is obliged to hold itself so-called call for proposals, inviting smaller entities for smaller groups active in the Caribbean to perform specific activities in the context of what we've heard the last 1.5 hours. It is a very interesting topic, a very needed topic, and as you can see, it's already the third call for proposals. And I think it's worthwhile stressing to everybody present here at this webinar that this might be the last call for proposal which is organized by UWI and its consortium members, because also time is running out. Time is running out of the contract of Hit Reset themselves. They still have about 2.5 years to go to finalize their own projects and their own big projects. It means that the third-party projects, the ones which will be applying in this third call for proposal, are also part of that. That's, for example, the reason why the maximum duration of these projects is 2 years in this so-called third call for proposals. 2 years, 2-year duration. Now, 2 years is not a long period. You are expected to submit by the end of September, which is in a couple of weeks' time. That means you have to do a very tough job in getting your proposal finished on time and be of good quality. You've heard the last presentation by Linus Baptiste, what kind of elements are expected from you to be put in your proposal, and it's quite a lot. And in this sense, I think it's a very good idea of UWI to indeed send a PowerPoint presentation to all the applicants so they can have a good view what is being asked, of course, in relation to the guidelines which you already have received. 2 years is not a lot, and after 2 years the results are very important. What we do see in many projects, even if it's 2 years, that you have a slow start. And you cannot afford yourself this time to do a slow start. You should try to get results after 1 and 2 years done and tangible and published and what you name. Everything is needed to show and disseminate the results you have to do. 2 years is a very short period. When it comes to the eligibility issues which have been addressed in the previous call for proposals, yes, indeed, there have been issues with organizations not having been able to prove that they do have experience in research and innovation over the last couple of years, sometimes maybe still ongoing, of projects with a value of at least €75,000 each. This has proven to be quite challenging, and this is also surprising to us because we do know that there are many organizations in the Caribbean who are active in research innovation on climate change related elements in the region. And so I therefore make a plea to all of you present here in this webinar to also tell it to others, other organizations, other people you know in the area who might be interested in obtaining a grant from this goal. And in this respect, I also have a question for the consortium members is, do you have any idea how much projects you would like to select out of this third and last call? This may be an interesting figure to show that and also to introduce a sort of competition, because you only want to submit or to select the best projects which are active in this field. Research innovation is needed for the obtaining tools so we can use in our daily life, in this case of the urban and rural families, urban and rural communities, and urban and rural government entities active in the Caribbean islands, to improve their planning, their urban and rural or their land management planning. It's a very important. On the other hand, also policymakers should be known how to use these types of tools, which can be produced by you with those projects, by your projects, because this is what is needed. And it has already been mentioned by Perry Polo what type of innovation projects are likely to be interested for the area. All these type of projects and the possibility of replicability to other islands, even other islands outside the Caribbean, is of vast importance, because we should share our knowledge. We should transfer our knowledge. Climate change is there, it is emerging, and it will get worse. So we need to share at the global level all the information, all the results, in order to help each other. So it is vital that we do put an emphasis on the replicability, on the usefulness, and on the impact of the projects you will certainly write a proposal about to be submitted by the end of this month, by the end of September. So this is an important challenge, but also an interesting one. And I really hope that there will be plenty of proposals being submitted. But again, it would be nice if Assad could mention later on how many proposals are still in the pipeline to be financed by the HIT Reset project. When it comes, and this is a comment for the bursary, when it comes to once you do have a contract and you have to, of course, submit all kinds of financial information, financial reporting, we strongly would like to make a plea to you to reconsider their obligation that all the invoices and bills and documents must be truly certified copies. This is not requested from our side at all. We do understand that in this period of internet and of course in the period of COVID, that it is quite normal nowadays to submit copies of all these type of informations, bills, invoices, timesheets, you name it. And that would be enough from our point of view. They do not need to be truly certified copies. And I would like you to reconsider this claim they were mentioning in the presentation. Then when it comes to visibility, it is mentioned a couple of times that it is the EU is financing, but it is not the EU that is implementing the OACPS Research and Innovation Program. It is the OACPS themselves who are implementing this project. So be sure that within all your visibility and communication materials, you mention the existence of the OACPS as implementer of the OACPS Research and Innovation Program. I would like to leave it with this, the dear friends in the Caribbean. I know it has been a long day for you already, but please, if there are any type of questions related with eligibility, related with type of projects or any other element, please feel free to let it know in the remaining part of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gerard. Let me just answer your question quickly. As you know, we are finalizing the selection report after much back and forth from the open call. And how many projects we could finalize on this particular third call will be dependent on what are the proposals that are acceptable in the open call. But we expect it will be somewhere around 4 or 5 if our proposals in the open call are accepted. So yes, there will be some competitiveness in this, and we will have to select the best projects because we are seeing there are adequate proposals on the table to make sure that we can be selective in the final projects. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, again, you all have had a lot of information thrown at you. And like I said, it may be that there's a lot to digest and to respond to, but much of this information has been supplied in the guidelines, which you all who are present here have been working on. So if there are any specific questions or bottlenecks, please feel free to ask them. They may have general applicability, and it will be much more direct because you have various elements of the whole HIT Reset management team, including from the partners available. So please just put up your hand or put the answer in the chat.
I'm seeing Nicole's hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just hope to get the ball going with the questions and to encourage the participants who intend to make an application to ask their questions. My question is to the EU, based on what was said before, and I hope it can shed some light for others who are intending to make their application. So it's about the eligibility requirements, and particularly for government institutions. This is, it tends to be a bottleneck in terms of them being able to demonstrate eligibility with regards to management of funds and so forth. So, you know, given the fact that we are dealing with planning coastal communities, you know, there are some government institutions that could put forward some very important ideas for us. What is the best way that they can demonstrate their eligibility concerning the management of the finances with these institutions? I hope the question was clear and it can come back with any clarification as needed. Thank you.
Perry, you want me to answer directly?
Yes, if you could.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Nicole. Indeed, it's not always evident that the government institution is in the position to do a project or to do a research innovation project. That's correct, but what we are asking as the main applicant, you call the lead applicant, that he should prove this. And it may well be that within the government entities, you may have specific departments or sections who do have this experience. So it is more an in-house consultation, which you should perform to find out if we are eligible as lead applicant. And if not, you can find another organization to become the lead applicant who does have this requirement, and then you can step in as a co-applicant. So feel free, but it is true. It is true, and it remains true, that the eligibility criteria when it comes to research and innovation is that the lead applicant should prove that he has at least 2 projects from at least a value of 75,000 euros over the last couple of years being implemented or still under implementation. And this, as Perry Paul already said, this has not necessarily to be in the domain of the subject of this call, but it must be in the area of research and innovation in general. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared, for that answer. Nicole, thanks for the question. Gerard, I'm going to add to your response, and you have a chance to come back on that. In previous discussions, we have also discussed, and you have indicated, that if, for example, a government entity has core funding available for it, and a discrete amount of that funding which is projectized and focused on specific research and innovation elements in which some objectives are developed and work is done and output is clarified, and it can be identified that that is at a minimum of 75,000, even though it comes out of core funding, that can be used once the documentation is clear, can be used to support eligibility of for example, a public institution.
The fact is that you are right when you're saying it is not important to know where the money comes from. This can be internal finance by, for example, a governmental entity, or it can be external finance by an external source. This is possible. This is not a problem. This can be done, but when it comes to research innovation, there must, of course, be a projects performed. And that, I think, is the best word, projects performed. Those are activities with a specific starting date and a specific finalization date. And if these projects can be proven and as a research innovation project, then it is fine.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Okay, any other questions?
Then I have a question from the people who are now present. Who of the people present today is going to submit a proposal? How many?
I'm seeing Colleen, I'm seeing Kamira.
And
okay. Colleen, you just wanted to, and Kamira, you just want to introduce yourselves and just say about your organization. I'm seeing Cardi as well.
Yeah, Cardi is here as well.
Good day,
And-
everyone. This is
Zena?
Colleen Puran from Habitat for Humanity. We're the part of the National Office of the International Body, and we work well with the foundation with vulnerable families. And one of the questions I also had was that we're having problems in getting the certification letters from our donors for the projects. So we've done several projects over 75,000 euros. We have contracts, signed contracts, we have final reports submitted and accepted. But like one donor said, they don't give those letters. So we're trying to see how we can work with them to see if they would give us something. But outside of that, all we have would be the signed contracts and the final reports saying that the work has been completed.
Carleen, can I just respond to that?
Sure.
I mean, I'm aware of one of the projects you all did on.
And that's the one that's giving us problems.
Right. I know of that particular project, but you all have a contract. You have a scope of activity which demonstrates R&I components, and you just issued your closure report on it.
Okay.
You all can demonstrate to us that even though this international government agency would not give the letter that you want, I think you have enough components that you can demonstrate that to us.
Okay.
Right. So
Yes, thank you.
those are the elements we would want. We know what the components are, and we want to demonstrate that.
And
Okay,
I would
thank you
like
very
to
much.
I would like to add here that all the documentation being requested in the scope proposals, of course, you will do its best to interpret as good as possible. And that if, for example, such a letter cannot be found or cannot be written by a donor, but the other documentations clearly show that you do have R&I experience, for example, with the contact, etc., then this should be okay as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Karin. Okay, Deepak. Deepak, I see your hand up.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. We are from the Ministry of Public Works from Suriname. We also submitted at the second call, but due to the eligibility criteria that we weren't, the funds weren't transferred to the Ministry of Public Works or the Ministry of Finance. So that was the reason that we didn't pass we weren't eligible. So, but we are trying to, because it is mentioned that it doesn't have to be a grant. So we have other projects, but we have to look if they are research and innovative projects. So then in this case, the Ministry of Finance would be the lead applicant and the Ministry of Public Works would be the co-applicant.
Yes, in fact, we have been with you all on this particular matter, and you just have to demonstrate that out of your core funding, as Gerard clarified, there must be a very clear projectized scope of activities that have objectives, have actions, and have closure. Reporting in the R&I frame. It can't be that you've gotten X amount of funding. You have to be able to identify clearly, even if it is out of core institutional funding, the two R&I components. Okay. The project, the other aspects of the projects are not the problem in this case. It is the eligibility of the institutions. So the arrangements you are proposing is workable once you can identify out of the core funding from the Ministry of Finance to the Ministry of Public Works, two discrete projectized R&I activities that meet the minimum requirements and the time frame.
But Deepak,
Yes.
I think we also talked about this Ministry of Finance issue a couple of months ago. We understand that the situation of sleuthing through money is a particular case in Suriname. On the other hand, the contract is being made between a specific, the donor or from the ministry itself, it doesn't matter who the donor is, with the Ministry of Public Works. And that's the most important proof. So I do not quite understand why a proposal was unsuccessful in the previous call. Maybe we can discuss it afterwards, or you can give us some more information now.
Gerard, what we can do is we can supply the documentation provided to us and get clarity from you on our concerns about the eligibility criteria rather than us discuss it generally in the meeting. But there was about the source of funding, and that the funding, they were identifying UNDP funding, which was executed in collaboration with and on behalf of the ministry, but the resources were not transferred to the ministry and they did not manage it directly. That was the initial problem, right, Perry?
Yeah, and it's written in the open call to election report. So if it is, you have any queries on it, I'm happy to provide any explanation. And if we want to change the decision, we can have a discussion. But yeah, but the explanation, I went into some detail explaining why the recommendation was as such. But as I said, I'm happy to provide any additional information you require.
We would be keen to support the Ministry of Public Works on the overall project. Technically, it fits our criteria, and maybe we can have further discussions. We might find a way to review. Are there any other people here who want to introduce themselves? Will be
Yes, there's Kadi and Kumira. Kumira?
Kumira, yeah.
Hi, good day, everyone. My name is Kumira Galston, Hazard Mitigation Specialist at the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management in Trinidad and Tobago. Right now, we have attempted to do some initial proposal development with respect to a coastal early warning system. But as the other colleagues on the call would have mentioned, we have a similar challenge with respect to eligibility as a primary applicant. We have made several attempts to be a co-applicant, however, without avail. But we hope that within the upcoming few days that we would be successful in trying to negotiate some ways to move forward. In terms of why we have not met the eligibility criteria, we specifically do not receive money directly as a government agency. However, it goes through either the Ministry of Finance or what happens is that it goes through a donor agency and we implement the project with their support. So for example, the same example I was shared with the funds going to UNDP and then UNDP supporting us with this process. We have a similar project that can be eligible under Miyamoto International, but if there can be some leeway or some considerations made for how we can move forward in terms of us having a contract and presenting this, it will be greatly appreciated in terms of us proving that we have been implementing the projects, but with the support of another agency. That would be greatly appreciated to drive this process forward. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question, Kamira? So the seismic, I'm aware of the seismic research project that you all did with Miyamoto. Is that the type of project that you all are talking about?
Yeah, that's one of the projects. And then we have a community flood early warning systems project under UNDP as well.
Right, I'm aware of the projects. Now, the issue really would be, because I'm aware of both projects, it is what is the role of ODPM? Are these projects being done for the ODPM or are they being done by the ODPM? In other words, is the ODPM responsible for the planning and the management and the execution of the R&I? These are two very interesting and useful R&I projects in the area of risk identification, right?
So we were responsible for both planning and execution.
Right. Well, you'll have to demonstrate that particular aspect of it to us. And then similar to the Ministry of Public Works, we can then examine whether in fact the level of involvement and engagement of the ODPM in those projects justify us saying that they have the track record and the experience in managing 2 R&I projects of that scale, right? So yes, we can continue a discussion on it, but as you know, we have been talking with you about being a co-applicant and a partner with, for example, the Ministry of Public Works, not Public Works, the Ministry of National Security, which is your home ministry, or other such entities in them being the applicant and you all being the co-applicant actually doing the technical work. So there are 2 options here. It doesn't have to be the Ministry of National Security, which is your home ministry. It could be in the case of seismic and the flood, you also have the Ministry of Works, which you all would translate and work with them in terms of river management standards and flood mitigation and management and construction and building standards. I'm very familiar with the 2 projects. So there may be the possibility of you all being the co-applicant with another applicant, but let us explore those both options, similar to the one we talked about with the Ministry of Public Works. We have been trying to, as you know, work with you all on finding the right applicant formula for that.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, what I would recommend is send me the contracts and I will take a look at it, and at least we could see something. We could say something once we have some documents in hand.
Okay, sure.
Can I ask a question? One more question, Camira. Who was the funding agency who donated the funds that Miyamoto executed the project under? Who was the funding agency?
It wasn't one directly, but I will confirm with you because I'm not the focal point for that project, but I will confirm that to you.
I'm aware of the project, and the project would fit right in as a very interesting and useful project. In
It was
fact,
just completed.
the 2 projects are actually demonstrate R&I, not just generic R&I, they demonstrate R&I experience and capacity directly related to the project objectives, which will strengthen them. All right. Legina, would you like to say anything?
Yes, I'm sorry. I have a little toddler with me and she's kind of noisy, which is why I was hesitating to unmute. But I am at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus and negotiating with potential partner organizations. We have a sargassum project, which is basically, we're producing a predictive model for sargassum beach events, and using that sargassum for transport fuel solution. So right now, I'm just in conversations with different organizations. I spoke with 5Cs. They were willing at the start, but when they saw how much was necessary, they said it was too much for them. They're preparing for COP27. So I'm now trying with another organization.
Legina, you could unmic, but let me just say, you're aware, I think we pointed out very specifically to you that the 3 partner entities themselves cannot apply for projects. So a unit in Mona or a unit in KFL or UWI within the UWI framework or the open campus cannot be an applicant. It doesn't preclude individuals who are doing R&I work themselves as an individual technical capacity working with another organization, but it must be patently not a UWI application. So the 5Cs would have been a perfect type of applicant because they have this responsibility for some of this work regionally as a multilateral agency within the CARIFORUM framework. So that is the type of partner that could make that. And the technical capacity which you as an individual have can work on the project, but it can't in any way be a UWI project.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Can we hear from Cardi?
Good day, Lisa James from CARDI. I'm here with my colleagues and CARDI, the Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute. We are a CARICOM organization with the primary focus on agricultural research and development. We have a presence in 14 CARICOM countries, and we are developing a proposal in the area of disease and pest management in the coastal areas of Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent and St. Lucia. We're looking at initially. And at this point, we did submit something, our initial proposal, and we anxiously await feedback with our one-on-one on Wednesday.
Well, thank you very much. I would just say that it is a little more than a first draft. It's a fairly well-structured, well-prepared proposal meeting the key requirements. So we're very happy. We'll be very happy to discuss whatever issues and refinements that are necessary in tomorrow's meeting to take it to the next step.
Thank you for that feedback. We are happy to hear that, and we too look forward to the discussions. Thanks again.
And I'm assuming you got my latest feedback on your eligibility. So looking forward to a revised version.
Yeah, we're working on that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right. Are there any other questions from the potential applicants? Based on the comments that are made, are there any comments from any of the HIT Reset technical team or from the TAU?
I could only repeat myself, all people participating in this webinar. This is a unique opportunity to get a very interesting grant from the HIT Reset project. I would certainly do your utmost to submit a proposal, and you can start, as you can see, by the latest, the 1st of January 2023. It's a good opportunity. It's an interesting topic. The whole world is watching at us, what type of things we can do in order to stay hold to the climate change changes which are occurring all over the globe. This is unique. This is also very good for your own public relations, for your own organization. I would just say, do not miss this opportunity. And when it comes to eligibility, make sure you are in regular contact with the consortium members and with UWI in order to see how flexible some things can be interpreted if you do not have the position, or if you're not in the position of all the documentation as requested. So we are also pleading to UWI to have this flexibility approach when reviewing the proposal. Thank you.
I've one remark. In the presentations, I did not hear of, in my view, climate change, resilience, and urban planning, spatial planning were hardly addressed, but they are main points in the specific objective number 4. So when I'm looking at the applications, I'm looking at that point. It's very important for me. That was my remark.
Hans, can I just clarify that we're really talking about the planning and management of coastal settlements. If you look at the word, and are not urban planning and management. I was going to make that correction when Elise talked about urban planning and management. So the urban planning and the land use planning framework is normally an integrated framework that takes on board many sector planning components. but you can have agricultural or tourism planning as we have in one component that has land use implications, and we will be asking the applicants to, where they have specific sector ones, to look at how their specific sector planning and management issues, innovations in those areas relate to broader community planning and management and other stakeholders. We will be asking them to look at that in the sub-meetings. But the projects don't have to be limited to specifically urban planning. If it does, it's very good, but it doesn't have to be limited. It must deal with plan management of coastal settlements, some aspects of it.
Yes, yes,
Okay?
it was my mistake. It was not urban planning. It was were resilient coastal settlements. Let's say
Yes.
it in that way.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
but there are links with spatial planning. It
There should be,
can
and we will try and
mean,
emphasize that and make those linkages.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. If there are no more comments, questions, thanks for those comments, Hans. I would like to thank both members of the HIT Reset team, the TAU, and or potential applicants for participating. The project director had to leave the meeting, so I will close it on his behalf. So thank you very much. We look forward to the one-on-one meetings tomorrow, where we could provide more details and clarifications on issues such as the ones just raised by Hans. And we look forward to good applications coming in from everyone.